Greetings, music lovers. Welcome to a very special episode of the Raaga Room. With all your overwhelming support, love, and encouragement, the Raaga Room completes 1 year today. This beautiful journey has enriched me on different levels, providing opportunities to meet with the finest artists of our country. Through their eyes, we have experienced and appreciated the many facets music brings us. Creativity in music refers to the divergent and convergent thought processes leading to transformative art forms with an aesthetic sensibility that is delicately presented to the audience. What does this mean? An artist with this quality looks for beauty in everything, appreciates, respects all forms of art, focuses and learns from the pleasant, and incorporates this learning into his or her art. Creativity is intelligence having fun, said Albert Einstein. Today we have with us one such special person who does not need any introduction. Grammy Award winner, US Billboard #1 artist, GQ Hero 2020, Indian music composer, environmentalist, the internationally renowned artist, Ricky Kej. Ricky Kej is a Grammy Award winning Indian music composer and environmentalist. He has performed at venues in over 30 countries, including at the United Nations headquarters in New York and Geneva. Ricky Kej was named a UNCCD Land Ambassador at the COP14 to raise public awareness about the challenges of land degradation, desertification, and drought. He serves as a UNESCO MGIEP Global Ambassador for Kindness, UNICEF Celebrity Supporter, and is an ambassador for the Earth Day Network. In 2015, he won a Grammy at the 57th Annual Grammy Awards for his album Winds of Samsara in the Best New Age Album category. His album, Shanti Samsara, World Music for Environmental Consciousness, was launched in November 2015 at the United Nations Climate Change Conference by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and then French President François Hollande. In 2018, Ricky Kej was named in the Real Leaders 100 list, Real Leaders being the signatory to the United Nations that curates this list of leaders who inspire the future. He was the only representative from India. Kej was honored by House of Commons of Canada for outstanding musical and humanitarian achievement in his endeavor to familiarize children with sustainable development goals. He created My Earth Songs, 27 children's rhymes based on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These songs, launched by UNICEF, are published in over 5 million textbooks in English, Hindi, and Kannada languages. His life and journey as a musician are now taught to 7th grade children in India as part of the ICSE syllabus English textbooks. He is notably also a professor at National Institute of Advanced Science at the Indian Institute of Science. It is with great pride and pleasure that I invite Ricky Kej to the Raaga Room. Thank you so much, Ricky, for coming to the Raaga Room. I welcome you, and I cannot tell you how happy I am. This is also the anniversary episode. So heartfelt gratitude. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, born in America, moved to India during your early years, taking up dentistry as your profession. changing your trajectory completely and coming over to the music side.
Actually, that's not true. I was never a dentist. I just studied to be one because I was forced to. But I've always been a musician. So there was not any actual change in trajectory in my career.
Okay, right. I have a quote here that I read from what you have written. It says, I have always believed we only protect what we love, and that is what I hope to achieve by showcasing the magnificence of our natural world through my music. And it is not unknown with your initiatives. You are a nature lover, you're an environmentalist. So, what is that thread that connects it all together, and how does your music harness these dimensions?
So there is a quote by Baba Diom, who is a very famous, legendary Senegalese philosopher. He said that at the end of the day, we as humans, we will only protect things that we love. We will only love things that we understand, and we will only understand things that we are taught. So I've always realized that when it comes to advocacy of the environment and even various societal issues and things like that, there are always two ways to go about things. One is basically shaming people into action. Showing gory images and animals dying and extreme poverty and gender violence and things like that, showcasing imagery of that and shaming people into action. And the second way is through love, that by positive reinforcement. Okay. By, like, let's say for environmental issues, showcasing what is beautiful in this world and showcasing the beauty that is rather left in this world, and hopefully through that love of that beauty, people will find it within themselves to protect, to conserve, and to sustain our planet. So that is the method that David Attenborough has used throughout his life. So that I would call the David Attenborough method of, like, showcasing beauty, and hopefully through that beauty, the people will find it within themselves to protect, conserve, and sustain. Whereas the other way of shaming people into action is also quite effective, but that's not the path that I've taken. But I've seen that to be very, very effective. Like, for example, the Greta Thunberg way. If you look at Greta Thunberg, who's currently 18 years old, she's the Swedish, climate activist, very famous all over the world. So she basically shames people into action by showing, like, analytics of the planet, which is like showcasing a very apocalyptic scenario, and showing images of the world where we can see that that whatever is happening in the world is absolutely wrong, and climate change is the biggest existential threat that we've ever faced as a species. So she basically showcases all these scenarios, and through these scenarios, she basically shames people into action, which, again, as I said, is a very effective method. So both routes reach to the same place, where we're getting people to change mere awareness of problems into actually taking action within their own lives. But it is two different paths. And of course, there is also a third path, which few people take up, which is using comedy. So that's also a really, really good way, that you have a lot of stand-up comedians, you have late night show hosts in America and in other parts of the world who use comedy and use sarcasm as a way of shaming people into action, or getting people into action, or inspiring people into action. So I would say that these are the three paths. The path that I've taken is the path of showcasing beauty.
And it's each and every one of your videos. It is very impactful and so beautiful. And when Winds of Samsara was released, when there was this one song, Balmare, Tore Naina Bade Chichor. When we were introduced to that song, it played on a loop in our house, and anybody that came to our house, we are like, you have to watch this. This is such a beautiful song. And there is so much simplicity in your picturization. I guess when it is really basic and it is easy for people to understand it, it is simple is when actually people get into it. And along with that, incorporating the beauty, and every one of your videos is really phenomenal. And currently, I was also watching The Divine Tides, the several I guess, was it nine songs in the album. So each one is so much better than the other. And one might notice that there is spirituality, and there is beauty, and there is music, all sort of connecting to some kind of a higher order. So when you're conceptualizing this kind of high quality, beautiful music, What is your thought process? And I also feel that for someone to have that kind of a state of mind, you should, it probably comes with meditation, not necessarily meditation. Meditation is one of the forms, but also like your work is meditative. So that kind of takes you from one place to the other. So what is your state of mind when you conceptualize such beautiful bodies of
So
work?
one thing that I have to admit is that I'm a complete and absolute atheist. So for me, I do not have any spirituality in me. I do not have any devotion or any such thing like that. But at the same time, when it comes to Indian culture, I consider myself to be a cultural Hindu, simply because like when it comes to spirituality and when it comes to the ancient texts like the Vedas and all of that stuff, there's a lot of useful information in there, and so I take everything face value, not in terms of like, there being an underlying God or underlying spirituality or divinity or, taking myself to another plane or something like that. Because for me, everything that I believe is right in front of me, and that's about it. So so when it comes to when it comes to the Vedas and the Upanishads, it's got a wealth of knowledge when it comes to coexistence. Because nowadays, when we think about coexistence, the only thing that comes to our mind is coexistence between different parts of the human race. That is, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, or people of different socioeconomic statuses and people beyond borders and things like that. Whereas if you look at any ancient culture, like especially the Indian ancient cultures, but if you look at any ancient culture anywhere in the world, coexistence has always been defined as living in absolute peace and absolute harmony between all entities, whether living or non-living. So it's not just about living in coexistence between all human beings, but it's also one step further where you're living in coexistence with all life. So it's plants, animals, everything. And not only that, it goes even a step further where you have to also coexist with the non-animate, inanimate objects, like, the land we walk on, the air we breathe, the water we drink. And that is so true and so relevant in today's times, where we are just not cognizant, we are not conscious about our human activity on this planet, where we feel that, we can just take from the environment and we don't need to give back. We do not realize that, we've sort of like, learned somewhere along our journey as being human beings that all resources or so-called natural resources are infinite.
Yeah.
You keep taking water away and the water will somehow form, or you throw a plastic bag or you throw garbage, the wind will take it somewhere, and but now we've started realizing, or if we pollute the atmosphere through our industry or through our vehicles, then that pollution will go somewhere. But now we realize that our atmosphere is super thin, and and it's getting filled up with carbon, and the carbon emissions are just filling it up, and because of that, our global temperatures are rising. We've realized that the plastics that we are throwing out are killing a total of 100 million sea animals every single year, and 1 million seabirds every single year are dying just because of ingesting the plastic that we are throwing away. And since plastic itself was created as a miracle material because it is non-biodegradable, which means that it does not destruct in the environment. And we somehow, during our journey as human beings, we've decided that a non-biodegradable material like plastic can be a disposable material, which does not make any sense. How can a non-biodegradable material be a single-use disposable material? Which means that every single toothbrush, every single straw, every single plastic plate, spoon, fork, plastic bag that we've ever thrown away in our lives exists somewhere on this planet, So you can imagine all that will pile up, because at the end, and it's already piling up. So that's what we need to understand, that we need to understand and we need to become a more conscious society. And I believe that a wealth of knowledge is there in our ancient texts, which we can take care of. Like, I'll give you another quick example that a few years ago, there was this huge campaign in India called Save the Tiger campaign. And a whole lot of corporates joined in, and a lot of NGOs and not-for-profits joined in, and the government, let's save the tiger, because the tiger was getting critically endangered. Of course, now the populations of the tiger has gone up in India, and the campaigns have been really successful. But the Save the Tiger campaign itself has never been about, it's never been about just saving that one species of the tiger. It's always been about that the tiger is the apex predator. Like, it's the top of the food chain when it comes to the forest. So what happens is that when the tiger population is going up, that means that the entire ecosystem of the forest is somehow working.
Yeah.
Because the tiger has got enough deer to eat, the deer have got enough foliage to eat, the foliage has got enough groundwater. There is not too much of human interference. That's why the tiger is able to survive. There's no poaching. So basically, the entire ecosystem of the forest is working. And I'd gone to this conference of the United Nations once in New York, and over there I was part of a panel, and one of the scientists, I think it was the scientist was from Switzerland. So he said that he was basically talking about this tiger being the apex predator and all of that stuff. And then I said that there was a 5,000-year-old book in India called the Mahabharata, where it actually says in the Mahabharata it says the tiger cannot exist without the forest, and the forest cannot exist without the tiger. So basically, there is so that's the reason why I believe that even though I'm not at all spiritual, I'm not at all I'm a complete and absolute atheist. But the thing is that one cannot deny that there is a wealth of knowledge in these ancient texts, and one has to take that wealth of knowledge face value and and understand what we can learn from it.
Wow. You were just talking about the conference you went to in New York, and I have also seen a couple of your programs where you were a part of the one of the summits where there was this president who was talking about the importance of environmental protection and how his only motto was to keep his country afloat. So did you want to talk about that and your initiatives that followed after?
Sure. So the thing is that so Kiribati is an island nation in the South Pacific. It's right in the middle of the in the Pacific Ocean. And the thing about so actually, you know what? I just wanted to see if you can look at this because it'll be quite interesting. So basically, when you look at the Earth as a planet, and you look at the globe itself. So like when you look at it, so let's see if you can see it. You can see it properly.
Ah, yes, I can see it.
Yeah, you can see. So basically, you move a little bit to the thing. So you see North America, South America. That's what we see in our maps and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
You move a little bit more, then you'll see Australia and all of that stuff.
Uh-huh.
You move a little bit towards this side, you'll see Africa.
Uh-huh.
Then see, you see Africa now. This is another famous picture that you see of the Earth. You move a little bit more, you'll see India.
Right.
Okay. But what nobody shows is that when you move a little bit more, this is the Pacific Ocean, which is completely blue in color.
Yes.
The whole Earth.
Yes.
So basically, you can't see any land.
Right.
So if you move the Earth, so basically, so that is how much of water is there on our planet. That the only pictures of our map that we see and our globe that we see are basically with land. And but there is one, when you turn the globe a little bit and you turn the Earth a little bit, then basically the whole thing becomes blue. Yeah. And when the whole thing becomes blue, right in the middle of that is basically this island nation of Kiribati. So they are in complete isolation. It's 21 inhabited islands, very low-lying islands, and they are predicted to be the first country in the world to go completely underwater due to climate change. And it's irreversible. In the next 70 to 80 years, the tallest point in any of the islands is going to be completely submerged underwater, which means that we'll have to redo our maps and globes because the part where Kiribati is, we're going to have to just paint in blue. So that's what's going to happen. So I'd gone to the country. I spent a lot of time with their president. I spent about 3 weeks over there. Interacted with their beautiful population, and I realized that this is a country that lives within nature. They don't have any industrialization. They don't have any carbon emissions. They are not polluting the atmosphere, so they're not at all responsible for climate change. But they are suffering the consequences of our actions. And that is, so basically the people who are least at fault when it comes to climate change are the ones who are suffering the most. And with the ocean levels rising, since they are the lowest lying islands, they are going to be the first to go completely underwater due to climate change. So I made a song with their population, with their people, and and I've been trying to raise awareness about this country because we may or may not be able to do anything about their fate. But we can use Kiribati as a very strong example to showcase to the world that climate change is real. Climate change is happening right now. There are current victims of climate change, and our actions sitting down here are having disastrous consequences on people on the other side of the world.
Wow. And art becomes such a powerful medium, isn't it? I mean, everybody has a responsibility to do the right thing, to have this kind of an awareness. But when you have a medium like art to communicate and to make people aware, that is a phenomenal thing. And more power to you for this. This is really amazing. And one more, and with this really vast knowledge that you have and the experiences that you've had so far, there may have been so many moments in your life that you have felt like you have had that kind of impact on people. So what are some that you can think of? And if you would like to talk about that?
So of course, that the little impact that is created through this is very fruitful, and it makes you feel good and makes you carry on with it. So what I did was that so one instance that I can talk about is that in 2018, along with two very close friends of mine, that is Dominic Cruz from Bangalore and Lonnie Park from New York, I created this project known as My Earth Songs. So essentially, what it was is that I realized that in order to create a more environmentally conscious society, which is my aim, one has to start with the children, and there is no two ways about that.
Correct.
And I've always believed that children are born with empathy, they're born with compassion, they're born with kindness, they're born with environmental consciousness, for an innate love in for nature. They're born with all of that. But through the education system and the way we are and the way we live our lives, we are sort of systematically erasing that from our children. So that's what's happening. And so my aim through these songs, that I wanted to create these songs for children, which would be like nursery rhymes all the way to adolescent rhymes, which would sort of like inculcate all these values, number one, or not erase these values from children. So that was the idea behind it. And also the fact that the songs that we learned during our childhood are songs we never forget.
Exactly.
So why not start the conversation on sustainability at a very early age? Because the songs that currently children learn, like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, is does not teach us anything about stars, and Baba Black Sheep teaches us nothing about sheep. So at the end of the day, let's do something that is fun. It does not seem educational, it seems fun, but it starts a conversation on sustainability. So we created this project, My Earth Songs. It's 27 songs, based on various areas of sustainability and society. And we launched it in the education system in India. So currently we are in, I think, about 7 or 8 million textbooks across India.
Wow.
And we are planning to scale up to about 20 million all over the world by 2022. Wow. So that is the idea. So these songs appear in the textbook. There's a QR code next to the song, and parents and teachers can scan the QR code and the song appears for free. So all the songs are in public domain. So that has had some tremendous impact where, for example, there was a school in Delhi where they had an open space and they were planning to build a building over there. And it seems that because of these songs, the children basically protested that. And,
wow.
So the principal actually very happily, because she was not sad about it, she was quite happy about it. And she was not sad that we could not build a building or whatever. So she was quite happy that this textbooks had this impact, and she actually wrote to me about it. And a lot of schools have written to me, over, I think, 60 or 70 schools across India have written to me that the children have forced the schools to go single-use plastic free. So, they refuse to have chocolates, they refuse to have bags of chips and things like that, which are in plastic. So that's one level of impact that is had. And of course, I perform to world leaders all the time. I performed 3 times now at the United Nations General Assembly in New York and in Geneva. So over there also, that's a different kind of impact, because you're performing in the emotional language of music about all these various complex ideas, and and it's to people who can have massive impact, through their own constituencies or through their own seat of power. So that's a different kind of an impact that the music has had. But nevertheless, it's only because of the impact that I've been having that I've been going, because it's a very non-commercial life that I lead. So it's just about the few successes that I get that keep me going.
Wow. And it's very true when you were talking about children, because they're such a clean slate and they're so absorbent at that age. And the best way for parents to teach something to children is by actually doing it versus telling them. And the more and more you have this kind of an education, or there is a music of this nature that is going on in the house, it is a reinforcement, not for the children, also along with the parents, because when you know that your child is constantly singing the song, even though plastic is convenience more than anything, you're just like, okay, this is much easier for me to use. So that's when it's like, no, my kid has been singing this song the whole day, I don't think I should do this. So it kind of enforces in the family also.
Correct. The problem with plastics is 3 things. It's convenience, there is no alternatives, and economics, because everything that's made out of plastic is cheaper. So that's where the supply chain itself needs to be disrupted, where people itself need to refuse plastic, and that's the only way this will be overcome. Because the biggest issue with environmental issues, especially more than climate change and more than plastics and species extinction or deforestation or whatever, is the thought that people have that somebody else will make a difference.
Exactly.
So we feel that if I stop using plastics, what difference will it make?
Yes.
Or if I stop going in my car, what difference will it make? That is the most dangerous thought, because every single person needs to completely empower themselves to believe that they can make a huge difference by just bringing about small tiny incremental changes within their own lives, because that is all that matters.
Correct. It has to become a part of your lifestyle. And somebody who sees you will be inspired and they might do just the same thing. You were also talking about the world leaders and how your music has inspired different world leaders across the world. And your album Shanti Samsara, which began with Asadoma Sadgamaya. And music is a universal language. We do not quite have to understand the particular language for us to, of course, lyrics are important. What it conveys is important, but there is also the sentiment that is translated through music, which not necessarily one has to understand in a language like Rabindra Sangeet or Baul music. I may not know Bengali, but I essentially understand what it is trying to convey. So that kind of a global or a universal impact that your music has had, and what were some of the feedbacks that you have received that your music has communicated to the world?
So the thing is that, as you correctly mentioned, Shanti Samsara, my album started off with Asatoma Satgamaya, the shloka. Now, the thing is that if you think about that shloka itself, that shloka is such a beautiful one because it talks about, bring me from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge, from death to everlasting life. So basically, if you think about it, that is exactly what is required right now, because the whole thing of bring me from darkness to light and bring me from ignorance to knowledge is what is happening today. What is needed in today's times, with the amount of misinformation that is being spread and the amount of fake news that is being spread, and how people are so ignorant to a lot of problems that are happening in this world, or even they may have the knowledge of the problems, but they're not acting on it. So the thing is that so that is a very important shloka, and that's the beauty of the language of Sanskrit itself. That Sanskrit as a language, even if you do not understand the language, it's somehow just through the syllables and the meter in which it is vocalized, you somehow get a sense of what is being said, and so that's why I call it like pretty much one of the best created languages, actually, because the language itself, the sounds are as important as the words, and the meter and the musicality of it is also as important as the words. So everything comes together in Sanskrit. It's the words, it is the syllables, it's the sound of the syllables, it is the musicality of it, it's the meter. Everything comes together to form this very, very strong and powerful language, which really gets into the hearts and souls of people. So that is why I use a lot of Sanskrit in my songs. Because if, let's say, I use English in a song, and of course I do use various languages, but if you use English in a song, you're alienating about 50% of the world's population. If you use Hindi in a song, you're again alienating maybe about 75% of the world's population. It's the same with any other language. But with Sanskrit, I do not believe you're alienating anybody, because I believe that it's just the musicality of the language is powerful enough to convey a very strong message.
Wow, wonderful. If I may ask you, your journey that took you to Grammy and your moments that followed, before, after, if you would like to take us through that experience, please.
Let's start off on the story of the Grammys itself. So I did this album with a South African flute player, a guy called Wouter Kellerman. And it was an album which was very close to me. We spent about 2.5 years working on that particular album. And, and the intention was not to make an album. The intention was just to work with each other and see where it goes. But at the end of 2.5 years or 3 years, we had enough music to cut an album with it. So, so we sat together and we made an album of it. And the album was called Winds of Samsara. We released it. And very surprisingly, the album was hugely successful in terms of, sales and streams and commercial and commerciality. We sold lots and lots of copies. We were the highest selling instrumental album in America for 2014, the year when it was released. We were number one on the Billboard charts for about 12 weeks. We were number one on the world radio charts for about 4 weeks. And we won a whole lot of awards all over the world. So it was very funny that, at times when you try to make an album which will sell, it does not sell. But sometimes when you make an album which, you just make because you're just trying to make music, and then that album actually sells like crazy. So then it sort of gives you a reality check as to, what works and what does not work. Then you start realizing that what works is basically, if you make something, from the pureness of your heart and without thinking about commercial aspects and without thinking about whether people will like it or whether people will not like it, you just have to love it. So that's what happened with that album. And, and the Grammys always felt like an unattainable dream. It was like a far-fetched thing, that will never happen during our lifetime. That's just impossible. And then, of course, like, I remember it was the first week of December when they announced the nominations for the Grammy. And I was asleep because it's daytime in Los Angeles when they announced the nominations, and my phone just did not stop ringing. And then finally I woke up and I picked up my phone and I realized that I've been nominated for the Grammy. So it was, of course, a huge moment, but at the same time, you have to wait for 2 months till the ceremony. And the first time you get to know, that anybody in the world gets to know, that whether you won or not is basically at the ceremony, when the celebrity opens up the envelope and announces. Before that, nobody knows who is won or not. Not even the Grammys know, because it's pretty much an automated process of printing that envelope also.
Okay.
So it's a completely foolproof way of doing things. So for the 2 months, a lot of people, especially the press, would constantly ask me that, are you nervous? Are you nervous? And my answer was always no, because the reality had not sunk in, that the magnitude of what is going on in my life had not sunk in. And then when I went for the ceremony, I remember it was February, I went to the ceremony and I sat down, and that is where, things went crazy, because suddenly I'm seeing all these people who I admire, like Hans Zimmer and Beyonce and, and Jay-Z and Chick Corea, all these, John Debney, all these people are like, sitting down like a couple of rows away from me or by my side or whatever. And, and I'm looking at that large stage, and then the reality sunk in. And that is where I got very, very nervous, because suddenly I realized that, wow, this is actually a Grammy Award, that I've been nominated for. Then, of course, like, when they called out our category and, and my name was called out, it was a very surreal experience going up on stage and collecting the award and giving the acceptance speech and all of that stuff. So that was about the Grammys. And
okay, and the Grammy goes to Winds of Samsara.
Thank you, Wouter, for these amazing 3 years of Winds of Samsara. And I'd like to thank the Recording Academy and USA in general, because it's only in America that an Indian and a South African can receive the biggest music award at its biggest music night. And thank you, USA, for being so embracing and inclusive in every way possible. And thank you to my wife, the love of my life, Varsha. Thank you, Rod, Suzanne, and Wanil. A quick shout out to my Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. I hope I made you proud, and you're doing a great job. Asatoma Satgamaya, Om Shanti, 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 Om. Thank you.
About the magnitude that the Grammy has had on me, of course, it was a life-changing experience for sure. But more importantly, I've always been into these environmental causes and social causes, and that has been what has been driving my life since the time I was a child. And so previously, before the Grammy, some people would take me seriously, some people would not, And after the Grammy, it gave me such a huge platform that a lot more people started taking me seriously. So I was able to do whatever I wanted to do in a much bigger and a much better way. And I believe that that's the way that people should take awards, because awards, a lot of people say that I hate winning awards and awards is not for me, and like I'm not about awards and all of that stuff. But I believe that awards are extremely important, because awards is what gives you validation. Correct. And it also gives you a platform, and one should not use awards for vanity. Awards should be used as a platform where you win an award and you think that, how can I use this award to do whatever I'm doing, whether it is in music or philanthropy or in various social causes? What can I do with all these things that I'm doing in a much better way and in a much bigger way, And how can I make this world a better place, through this platform that has been given to me by this award? And that's the way that I look at it.
Wow, that is so practical. And there is no ceiling for what one can do. With this thought process, I guess there is no limitation. You don't have to put yourself in a place where, like, I have achieved this, this is it. There is nothing more beyond that, because there is always something beyond what we can always do.
Exactly.
And for me, this is going to be a takeaway from this conversation. What you just said, it definitely makes so much sense. And I have also heard you say that awards are very important. Again, validation is something that we all seek. And what the validation does to us is probably helps us do better. So it is definitely required for somebody who we look up to, or somebody that we are seeking validation from, should always validate what we are doing, which is very important to us psychologically. Again, having said that, this is one thing that has had a tremendous change in your life. And what were some other moments where you felt like, yes, this is it. This is what I did this for. We have talked about climate change. You have given us a lot of examples, but some things that you can think about, and if you would like to share.
I guess there have been many moments like that, like, musically itself, like, for example, in 2019, I got to perform in Leh at an elevation of over 12,000 feet to the Indian Army, to 10,000 soldiers of the Indian Army. I got to do a private concert for them. So that was, of course, a really, really great experience. Then also performing at the United Nations General Assembly in New York for the first time when I performed over there. Because I remember so clearly when I'd gone for my rehearsal and sound check, when I entered the room, I was so nervous because the thing is that the very thought that every single world leader, since World War II, has actually sat or spoken in this chamber, in the same chamber, and every single treaty that has been signed anywhere in this world has been signed over there or has been immensely discussed over there. So it was just an amazing experience, just walking in over there and setting up my equipment and getting ready for my concert, and of course performing the concert. And then after that, of course, I performed 2 more times over there, and the last 2 years I've been performing virtually there because of the pandemic. But yeah, that's the thing. And there have been several moments, where I performed in villages and in small towns and all of that stuff, where people appreciate your music so much, and they take home the messages that you give about sustainability and about the environment in a much more substantial way. So these have been so I cannot quantify exact points of feelings where I felt that wow, this has been amazing, but I mean that all that I can say is that there is nothing for me to complain about my career. I'm quite happy with the way things are going.
Absolutely. A creative brain is a very heavily trafficked brain. There's constantly like a barrage of thoughts. Like you said, artists also have mental issues, which you said very correctly. Yes. And having said that, there are you have a thought in your head and the thought is very distinguished and you think that when you execute it, that is how it's going to be. But sometimes there is a bridge between the thought process versus what comes out in terms of execution. Like such, there are some thoughts that come to fruition, some may not. So how does, what is your thought process, and what are several, I'm sure there are so many other ventures or creative offerings that you are working on, something to think about in future, if you would like to talk about some of them.
Sure. So the thing is that about artists making art, there are always 2 kinds of that. One is basically commissioned art, where somebody comes to you and pays you money and tells you to make something, like what happens with the movie industry, that, a filmmaker comes to a music director and says that, all right, this is a situation between the hero and the heroine, and, and make a song based on that. Or an advertising agency comes to you and says that this is the brand, it's like whatever, a beer brand, and, and create a piece of music based on this particular situation. So in those situations, one can have a lot of writer's block and things like that, because, you have to come up with something really quickly, and sometimes something that is not in your comfort zone. So I believe that there are people who are really good at that. I used to do a lot of advertising commercials during the first 13 years of my career. I did more than 3,000 of them. So I believe that working on this kind of commissioned art, I believe is just like working out in a gym, that the more you work out, the better you get at it. So it's the same thing, when it comes to commissioned art, that's what I believe, that the more I worked on it, the better I started getting at it. So when somebody would give me a brief, immediately a tune would come to my mind, and it would be that easy. So Hans Zimmer, the famous American composer, film composer, in fact, the most famous film composer in today's times, he had, there was an interview of his, which I was watching, which was quite interesting, where he said that somebody asked him the same question, that what if you get writer's block? What stops you? What gives you inspiration to make so much of music, because you make so much of music? So he said that my inspiration comes solely from my producer calling me up and telling me that if you don't deliver the music by this particular time, that this is what's going to happen to you. So he said that when I get those kind of warnings, then he's like, my creative juices immediately start flowing, So everybody has got their own way of getting things done. The second kind of creativity is basically where you make music or you make art only as an extension of your own personality and beliefs. So whenever you feel like making art, you make art. Like if you look at a person like M.F. Hussain, or if you look at a person like Vincent van Gogh or Pablo Picasso, these people, when they want to make a new painting, it's not like they're going to go to all the art galleries around town and see, okay, what is everybody doing? What is the current trend? Or they're going to look through magazines and they're going to say that, acha, this is what everybody is doing, let me do something similar, or this is the current trend, so that's not the way that they would function. And at the same time, if you wanted to know what kind of a person Vincent van Gogh was, you're probably not going to read a book on his or a biography. You're just going to look at his paintings and you're going to be like, oh, that guy was a very tormented person, you know. He was he used to see things very differently, and you're going to get to know his personality just through his or her art. So that is the way that I believe, and that's the reason why I stopped doing commercial music, because that's what I believe that needs to happen to music. Where if you, I wanted my life and my musical career to be that if you listen to my music from 2017, you will know what kind of a person I was in 2017. If you listen to my music in 2019, then you should know what kind of a person I was in 2019. Whereas nowadays, especially in India, all the composers are making mainly film music. So basically, you have really principled individuals and individuals who are heavily into gender equality and all that stuff, making item songs like Sheila Ki Jawani and Kajrare and all of that stuff, And maybe 100 years down the line, people will listen to, let's say, a Sheila Ki Jawani, and the composer of that song is Vishal Shekhar. They'll think that, oh, Vishal Shekhar was like Mika Hassan, as a person, So basically, I believe that your art defines you as a personality, and it is very important to do that. And once you start so to answer your question, once you make your art define you as a person, then automatically this writer's block thing will completely stop. Because then you will make music only when you're inspired to make music. And if you're not inspired to make music, you just won't make music. That's the way it is.
That is actually so beautiful what you said, and kind of brings us back to where we started. We were talking about intrinsic motivation when you were talking about Picasso or Van Gogh. Nobody would have thought, okay, I'll sit back and think about how it was, but they just did it because they loved it. And today what we are seeing is their work of art and the catharsis that one goes through from point A to point B. And after a certain number of years, you sit back and you look at how far you have come and how far you have to go. It's a beautiful journey. I hope everybody experiences that, and more through shows like, conversations like this. And everything that you have said today is so practical and so attainable if we only incorporate discipline. And if we are true to what we do, I guess anything that you put your heart to is attainable, is the kind of message that I get when I talk to you.
No, and that's what, and also like coming back to what I said in the beginning about mental health issues when it comes to artists, it is a very serious problem for two reasons. One is that artists take their art very personally. So the thing is that it's not just about the money and financial strain, because sometimes you're not getting work and all of that stuff. But then the thing is that the thought starts coming to artists that maybe I'm not good enough, because being an artist, that is the biggest issue, that being an artist, you're opening yourself up to criticism on a daily basis. And that is not the case with any other profession, With an artist, you are constantly opening, you're just showing a piece of your life to somebody, because at the end of the day, people say that don't take it personally, but how can you not take it personally when it's a piece of you, your art? So the thing is that you will take it personally when somebody does not like it, or when people are not calling you for more work, or when people are not calling you for shows or whatever, because immediately it's going to hit your head that maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe somebody else is better than me, So that is why mental health issues is a very, very strong concern. And of course, there's clinical depression, which I won't even discuss, because that is basically, even when nothing is wrong, you still feel something is wrong. And that is where you definitely need medical help. And you have to treat any kind of mental illness, like whether it's mental illness that is caused due to your art, or whether it's caused due to the physiology of your body or whatever. It's very important to understand that is just like any other disease, like diabetes, or like a heart issue or whatever, like any non-communicable disease, where you definitely should not be ashamed of it, and you should definitely seek help for it. So I think there's nothing wrong with saying that, that I've got a mental health issue and I'm seeing a psychiatrist for it, or I'm seeing a therapist for it. Just like how you would, there's nothing wrong with saying that I'm a diabetic and I take an insulin injection every day. There is nothing wrong with it. So that is something that needs to be made very, very clear. And so that is why I believe that artists need to understand that mental health becomes a huge, huge factor for them to consider constantly when they're in the art, and they need to take care of their mental health. That is extremely important. So that is why it's not about that, the cliche that if I'm doing something that I love, everything's going to be fine, or I'm going to be happy. And because another issue is that, and I'm sorry I'm going in circles, but another issue is that artists are very proud people. So they do not want to admit that they're having a mental health issue, whereas most artists are having mental health issues, So they do not want to admit it. And because of this, younger artists feel that everybody is happy, So that is why. So I think it's important that artists like, for example, like a good example is Deepika Padukone. She came out in the open saying that, I've got mental health issues, and lots of actors and actresses in America have come out in the open that, that I've got mental health issues. And I think it's extremely important to come out in the open so that the younger generation understands that it's not rosy everywhere,
Right.
That there are issues with this, and I need to completely buck up, and I need to understand that I need to overcome all these issues when I become an artist.
Absolutely. And very rightly, when you said that when we go for a physical, we get treated for a physical ailment, or even when we go for a medical annual check, we get to see our the vitals, but we don't get to kind of evaluate what is happening in your mind. And especially for the artist diaspora, it's like it's a swinging spectrum. It's either you're on a very high side or you're on a low side, because I guess, like you just mentioned, you're putting yourself out there, and it's not an easy thing, because the minute you put yourself out there, you're out to judgment and vulnerability. And I think Brené Brown was one person who said that wherever there is vulnerability, it is an act of courage. So with all of that, when you put yourself out there, involuntarily, your system is expecting a certain validation from somebody, that they will tell you that this is appreciated well. But in today's media, a social media related world, when you put your recording out there, when you get 10 likes versus your expectation of 1,000 likes, that itself is good enough to set you off on a path where you're like, I don't think I did what I did was good enough.
True, because like if you look at even, let's say, A.R. Rahman and Slumdog Millionaire. Okay, that's a very good example. Slumdog Millionaire won 2 Oscars, it won 2 Grammys, it won a Golden Globe, and it won a BAFTA. So it basically swept the awards. There is no more awards that he could possibly win for that film. He just swept every single award that is out there. But at the same time, I would say about like, there are people who hate the soundtrack and there are people who love the soundtrack. So now imagine that if it was a composer who was not, who did not develop a thick skin from doing hundreds of movie soundtracks, because A.R. Rahman, I would expect him to have a thick skin, simply because he's opened himself to judgment like for decades, and with so many with such big hits and all of that stuff. Now the thing is that it's not humanly possible through art to please every single person in this world. Right. Even a person like Lata Mangeshkar has got haters. Even a person like Pandit Ravi Shankar has got haters. Even a person like Michael Jackson has got haters. There's not a single person on this planet who has created art where every single person on this planet has liked it. So like if you look at Slumdog Millionaire, which has won every single award, imagine if it was a person who was a newcomer who started off with mental health issues. That person would have gone into a downward spiral, because on one end, that person is receiving so many accolades, and on the other end, so many people are hating the soundtrack. So that is the idea. So what I'm saying is that it's not possible to please every single person with your art. You just have to understand that you've given it your best and you've given a heart and soul into it. Like, for example, this Christopher Nolan, the director of, all these famous movies like Dark Knight and Inception, Interstellar, Dunkirk, all these movies. He said something which really resonated with me. There was an interview he had given to the Screen Actors Guild. And in that particular interview, he said that, he's like, when I go to, since I'm an artist myself, he said, when I go and watch a movie on the big screen, he's like, it can be a good movie, it can be a bad movie. He's like, I've stopped judging movies now. He's like, I stopped judging movies whether they're a good movie or a bad movie or an absolutely crappy movie. I've stopped judging that. But he's like, the thing which my brain is moved into another plane, where when I look at that screen and I see that this particular filmmaker has put in everything into this film. And this filmmakers put their heart and their soul into the film. And when I watch that film, I truly believe when I'm watching the film that and I'm watching the essence of the film, that this filmmaker has truly believed that this is the best film that they have possibly made in their life. And they could not do anything to make it better. So even if it is a terrible film, he's like, I just like the film. So, and I thought that was amazing, because there's so many times you hear stuff which does not sound good, like, music that does not sound good. But when you listen to it, you can feel that this person has put in everything into that music, This person has put in so much of emotion, so much of energy, and has put in their entire essence into that particular piece of song. So after I listened to that interview of Christopher Nolan, I started appreciating this, that I started appreciating hard work when it comes to the art. But but that is something that only artists can appreciate, not the common person.
And that is the exact thing that everybody should focus on, that whoever sees my work should see what I have put in it versus I'm going to do it for a certain thing. That is such a powerful message. And I think in today's session or today's conversation has really I really have a lot of respect for all that you have done, but personally talking to you today, this is the first time that I'm talking to you. What you actually communicate is very simple, very basic, very easy to follow. And that kind of tells your tremendous success and where it has taken you and where you're headed. So these are just like a path to all of that.
No, I guess I've always been, one thing that I've been in my life is that I've always been a very realistic person. So, I do not expect anything. I do not expect any accolades to come in. I do not expect anybody to do any favors for me. So basically that, I just take life as it is. And I believe that the only way to get things done is if you do it yourself. So I've always been, and one of them is, of course, and I'm not promoting it, but the thing is that one of the reasons why I'm this way is because I'm an atheist, because I do not believe in a higher power. And I believe that the only way to get things done is by yourself. So that's one of the reasons why I've always been a realist in my entire life. And also, to be honest, even though I'm optimistic in a lot of ways, I'm also a little pessimistic also, because I believe that pessimism, there are only two things that can happen with pessimism. Like if you say that something's not going to happen, something's not going to happen, and you're pessimistic about it, there are only two outcomes that can happen. One is that you can be proven right. Or the second option is that you can be pleasantly surprised, so that's what I believe, being a pessimist sometimes works because then, you do not have unrealistic expectations about what can happen.
Absolutely. We've had some great conversation today. And I think whoever watches it, artists especially, this is like the behind the scenes kind of a thing. And for someone who's going through something, I think this is a great message to convey. And for me, I could not have asked for any better than this to mark the 1-year completion of Raaga Room. And I'm so glad that I was able to talk to you. And thank you so much for coming to the Raaga Room and all the wonderful things that you have shared. Thanks a lot. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. All my very best.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank
for
you.
now.
Bye.
Dear friends, we thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful episode with Ricky Kej. We hope to see you soon in our upcoming episodes of the Raaga Room, where the soul listens as notes speak. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.